And we're live. So there. Here we are, 10:30 on Tuesday, August 17th, 2021, for our Committee of the Whole work session. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. We have our agenda, we have our minutes, and I guess just for everyone's benefit, it's a work session, so we won't be taking any action. It's just an opportunity for us to ask questions, have a conversation, learn, share, and collaborate. So we won't need to make motions or any of that jazz. We have our agenda in the minutes. The second thing on the agenda is presentations. The first thing is the discussion of the 1% lodging tax, and this is the second opportunity we've had to talk about this. So I really appreciate both the first time as well as your willingness to come the second time, because there is a lot of conversation out and about, a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, and concerns as well, just about where we have been, where we're now, where we're heading. And so I've certainly received a lot of feedback and a lot of good food for thought and conversations. There is the lodging tax FAQ attached in our agenda. I'm hoping that we all had a chance to look through that. I found it super informative and really proactive and good information. Has this been shared widely yet, or okay?
No, it hasn't.
It's brand new.
It's brand new based on our meeting of June, and knowing that some of the questions that came out of that, and then also, with the idea of coming out of COVID and sustainable tourism and what that looks like in Cook County, and also the misinformation and obviously the misunderstanding around the lodging tax of 1% and the sales tax of 1%.
Right.
We took upon ourselves within the Visit Cook County team to create this FAQ, hoping that we can, if it's helpful to you, we feel it's going to be helpful to our community. And just knowing if this does move forward with endorsement from the commissioners, that we will then work on an education process with the community members and with our tourism stakeholders.
So there's two small details that I thought we should talk about in regards to the FAQ, and everyone pitch in and whatever as they see fit. The first one, and maybe this is splitting hairs, but I just want to be as accurate and straight as possible here, was in the second to last answer. The first paragraph. First of all, I'm just very happy and pleased with the whole thing. I think it's great, awesome work. Thank you. But it was in Cook County, we have a strong healthcare system, 6 grocery stores, recreational businesses like Foods and Lots, and the mountains are Northwest Old School. Maybe they should speak for themselves, but I'm guessing they'll say they're an educational facility or something, organization versus recreational business. But they certainly are significant in our community and continuing to grow and expand. We can definitely see that. But so there's that. And again, apologize if this is too detailed focused. And the other one was in the last answer, which I think is, again, a very important thing to bring up and point out the question answered. Is that even it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, that wasn't it. It was something about that, though. It was something about the sales tax. Apologies. Oh, no, it was the second paragraph of the second to last answer again. From the influx of sales tax property tax dollars into the county budget. I feel like the sentence influx of sales tax into the county budget is a little misleading. Whereas the county does manage that, it doesn't go into our budget, our operational budget. It goes just to the 1% projects. And so that, and the county board had to, approve that. But it's not like we can just keep taking money in from the sales tax and put it into our operations. So those are the only, and clearly the level of detail I was looking at this is maybe beyond what was necessary. And that's all I could find, so.
Woo! Winning team! Maybe we should just say with the addition, rather than with the influx. Maybe that word influx feels like, oh my God, waves of money. And if we say with the addition of sales tax and property tax. Does that feel better?
County budget and funded projects.
Well, so I guess what I had an issue, influx is kind of a loaded word, I guess.
I get it.
But, so thank you. But more is just that sales tax doesn't go into our budget. That is only for the 1% projects. And so it does not go into human services, it does not go into law enforcement, it does not go into road vehicles.
I see
It doesn't
what you're saying.
necessarily belong in that
Okay.
sentence.
Right, that's
Okay.
where I was going. But I do think, as the last question addresses, that it does go somewhere, and it does stay here, and it does won't go to projects that the county board had approved in the past and all that. So I think the last question does address that, but I didn't like that. It rubbed me wrong.
We can even remove that paragraph, because it kind of leads into the next question and answer. I like the living like a local piece. Okay. We'll tweak that piece.
Yeah,
Before we
I mean, it's not
No,
our
if you're-
document, it's your document, I just want to give a little feedback.
No, but that we value your opinion. And
Thank
if you're picking up on that, believe me, there will be others.
Yeah. Were there any other questions or concerns about this particular document from commissioners or?
I just appreciated it. It addressed so many questions that I've received in my interactions with, people living in my district, and I think it really helps to explain that 1%. I think it's a great tool, and I'm curious about how you want to use this. How you're going to share this with the public.
Well, we've talked about many ways. What I've been explaining to members of our board is, and to you all, is hopefully we'll be able to receive the endorsement by the county commissioners as early as next week, because we have a lot of work to do with our legislators. We plan on doing some work with Northern Wilds in the Cook County News Herald, also online. It will be on our website. We'll share that information that you can find it in our media room on our website. We're really sensitive as a team right now to all the conversation that is happening in our community about the use of lodging tax. And so we really want to get that out there in a thoughtful manner, which is why we did this amount of work. So, and if you have suggestions and ways to share it, I'm also thinking about attending a city council meeting of Grand Marais and doing a presentation so people understand it there as well. So I don't have any problem getting it up in front of groups and doing that education process. I think it's really needed and necessary right now, just with the optic on tourism and sustainable tourism. So it will only benefit all of us if we can tell this story correctly going forward. So if you have ideas too, please
So
let
you
me know.
mentioned the News Herald and Northern Wilds. I would also consider Gloria.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you make it shareable on social media, then it'll go real quick.
Yeah. I'm sure it will get to some of those pages rather quickly, like the Grand Marais community page.
Right.
Probably do something again with WTIP. Lily and I did a pretty extensive interview with them a couple months ago. So we would then revisit that opportunity as well.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question. where it says, why can't lodging tax be used for housing or other local programs? And yes, I agree, it's unique to Cook County. It's not in state statute today. Doesn't mean it couldn't be there in 2 years. So let's address it, let's talk about that. We can advocate to use some of that money for housing. That's possible.
Yeah, and, yes, we can also advocate for, anything. And so what I think is important is to recognize, the impacts of what we have going on right now. Recognize the very, maybe robust isn't the right word. We have a very strong tourism economy, and so and we may need help from the chamber. We definitely need help from the chamber, and just help navigating the state and what is going to be most effective. I don't want to undercut good things we got going on. Talking to our regional peers, even our statewide peers, about the impacts that the pandemic has had on their economies, we fared very well. And I gotta believe it is in large part because of our good reputation, our robust, our strong tourism economy. And other areas do have that, but for whatever reason, not as much. And so I gotta believe it's partnerships and communication, and promotion as well, education. What I especially appreciate is the willingness of DCC to look at other ways that the 1% can be used instead of just blasting promotion out there, billboards in the cities, with the different education pieces for visitors that are coming here, that are here, whether it be Leave No Trace or public health, guidance, and promoting that, and that also encourages a very healthy community. And so, this leads into our number 3 item on the agenda. So I'm very welcome to go there already, as I think we need to talk more about this item. But I think there are other ways to address without undercutting the good things we have going on. So we can advocate for that, and maybe it's going to come down to it. I'm not convinced yet that that's the path we should go. I feel more like we should build off of our strengths, work with the good things we have going on, and adjust, tweak, refocus if necessary. But it seems more productive that way. But that's just my take on it. Commissioner Paulson, please.
Well, I would also offer up that I think part of the reason that we had such a large amount of people that came to our area was because our efforts here in the community through public health and all of the hospital, the clinic, and everyone, and our low rates of infection here were enticing to some people to come up here as well. I offer up to you, though, maybe in this discussion we can think about that intersection of the tourism and the housing and how that comes together, because of course we want the tourists to come, that our economy is based on that, but at the same time, as Rena Rogers pointed out to us, when you struggle to get the people to perform the jobs and services that make that experience really unique. Of course we have our, the environment and the shore and, all of the things, the Gunflint Trail and everything that we have, but it takes people to provide the experience. And I really think that is where that intersection comes together, where we can look at, if you're going to have a conversation about that 1%, that's actually, for promotion, but it's also to ensure that the people get the experience when they show up at our community and in our area to do that. And that, I think if you if we look at it from that, we might find common ground to have that conversation, to at least explore if there's something to be had there.
Yeah.
It's a thought.
So this does go straight into the next item on the agenda, and so I'm going to throw it out there.
Can I answer the question?
Sure, yeah.
First of
great.
all, I want to recognize that we have 2 of our board members here. So that's why these 2 lovely ladies are here.
Hello, thank you.
So, and Jennifer Kennedy is the chair of our board. So I just wanted to let you know. And Mike Larson behind me is a past member of our board as well. So, and Steve, of course. I wanted to say to your question, it's not that, truthfully is, there's a covenant around a lodging tax collection. And that, even though we have a special endorsement of that 1%, the covenants around that still remain about using it for event promotion and programming. That's the piece where that's where it says no. And if we bring something to the legislature, our legislators right now about, hey, we want to divert this 1% lodging tax collection to housing, that is way off what lodging tax is used for. Not that there can't be some funding source found to promote lodging, it's just not what lodging tax has ever been used for. It stays within the lane of tourism and promotion.
And then,
Even-
sorry, I was just gonna say, it's not, though the 1% collection is unique to Cook County, lodging tax collection is not.
Right.
So to change the statute around lodging tax would change it for the entire state.
And that's what, I'm not advocating for that. I'm not advocating changing the 3%. I'm raising the question about the 1%, which I do not want to totally eliminate your budget.
No.
I mean,
No.
that's not my intention at all. But your budget, I mean, this last year that you presented to us was $500,000. There's been 6% average increase in lodging sales over the last 8 years. Guess that maybe that will continue. I kind of think this year we're on track to be way over that. But let's average it out for 6 years. In 5 years, you'll have $700,000 budget. And I'm saying, we as taxpayers have a need. And I have to be accountable for taxpayer dollars. And I'm just like, okay, what else can be out there if we know that lodging tax is going to increase?
Let me back it up. The lodging tax, whether it's 3 or 1, still holds the covenants of lodging tax. And it's not paid by the community, it's paid by our visitors when they sleep in our bed, whether it's 3 or 1. The 1 still has the covenants around event marketing and promotion. It doesn't bleed into other areas like housing, building houses, building parks, building
Did you
arenas.
just say that lodging tax, there could be another funding source for?
Well, so I think where we're at is that we have the law, and for what it's used for. What Commissioner Hawkins is suggesting is that we can change the law, we can tweak the law, and I think that's where there may be a difference in strategy. And this, again, for my 3rd attempt, I'll bring it to the next item, and we can go back and forth. We don't have to stick one there or the other. But what I think might be a stronger sell to the state is having, so I think this 1%, clearly it's very unique, right? Cook County's got it. That's it.
Lake County actually has it now too.
Well, dang it. But, so, no, that's great.
Still special.
It's still just not as special. It's pretty unique. And I value that. I value the uniqueness, I value the flexibility. I don't want to jeopardize it because I do believe that it has done a great amount of good. A person could argue maybe too much good. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but the flexibility is something I really like. Where I was going to suggest is instead of changing the unique, rare legislation we have, is to say, hey state, this is a statewide issue, this is a national issue, housing. Why don't you give us the option as a locality to add a 1% lodging tax to go to HRAs? The HRA would manage the money. That's the board, much like the EDA and the director. That keeps it separate. We don't jeopardize our 1%. Hope, I mean, that's my hope. Maybe they won't see them as separate. but that'll give us resources that is not a burden on the local taxpayers to help address the strong numbers we have coming in and help local residents. I just think that strategy, I do see a pushback that I've seen in the community is just that some lodges feel that we already tax visitors enough. And so that's the one pushback I can see. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy there considering the sheer number of visitors. I want to have visitors, but it's just, what we're trying to do is address our local residents.
Just a question. When you say an additional 1%
Yep.
and championing that through the legislature,
Yep.
who is the champion? Because who is the champion in Cook County?
Right?
Because I don't feel Visit Cook County as your
Nope.
destination marketing and
Correct.
management organization is that voice.
Yeah.
So,
The chamber would be the whole, and that's why
so,
it's, yeah.
so
we need
as
to-
a chamber member, we already have our lobbyist teed up to rally for the endorsement of the 1% if you all approve the endorsement going forward, or if there's a unanimous support to do that. I really feel that's going to get pretty confusing
Sure.
because of this. And I said it to you all last week at the HRA meeting. The optic on housing needs to stay, and I wrote this to you as well. Although there is this optic that tourism is creating this, drastic depletion of housing, part of that is not true. And I think people need to stay not siloed to tourism being the housing problem. That's really important to understand. There's many, many of our major lodges that employ the most tourism employees that have taken care of their housing issues. So it's a lot, this goes back 25 years, our housing issue, and it has never been addressed along the spectrum of years. That's the piece that's really important to me,
Okay.
to make sure.
Yeah, Commissioner Starley is next.
Okay,
Or,
thank you.
I mean,
Well, our housing needs are so big. So, if you say to the legislature, we want to change it and be able to take some money off of the 1%, a couple $100,000, where does that go with the housing needs that we have? I think it's a drop in the bucket, and I just don't like to tweak something that's already so good and worthy and what we're already doing in the community. That's why going on to the second one,
Right.
getting into HRA and hiring someone to direct that, they have the resources to be able to help us with that. I don't want to take Peter to pay Paul.
And I would support that strongly. That's what I was going to say, that we have such a successful use of that 1%. We have built our shoulder seasons. We have created full-time jobs here in the county because of it. And from individuals that I've spoken to on the chamber, people from the Duncan Trail Scenic Highways group, and from the nonprofits that I'm part of. They appreciate and want that 1% and need that. And I think, again, let's not mess with it, and let's look at the housing issue in a different fashion. I would like to see AMC work on housing, because it's a problem not just in Cook County, it's not unique to us, it's everywhere.
And that's I'm so glad you brought up AMC because it is, we all know that it's a statewide issue. We hear that. I think there'd be a lot of support from AMC. And so perhaps they could be the champion instead of Judy Erickson. And that might be a much better strategy because I do recognize that could get confusing and muddy and need to stay focused and keep things separate. And she would know much better than me how to navigate on that. So that's probably a much stronger approach if we were to do that. But again, I guess we should maybe talk more about that potential pushback, and we need buy-in from the chamber. And as members of the chamber, I hope you could give some perspective on just, I know there are other lodging facilities that say, that's awesome. Like, bring, if that's a viable way to fund some housing, let's do that. Recognizing it would be an increase in that. So, do you have perspective on that?
When is the 3% up for renewal?
Doesn't
It
ever
doesn't, so it'll never sunset.
I really don't. My concern is mainly that I just think it's a different bucket than lodging. I mean, Odyssey Resorts, we represent a lot of different counties that have different properties. What makes Cook County so unique is that we hold so many more year-long employees. And it is directly because of the 1%. We're able to, just in the last short while, we have 20 more full-time people. 20 more of those 20, 15 of those are homeowners. And that's those are homeowners that we brought to the community. These are not people looking for seasonal lodging. And seasonal lodging is the difficulty. But we are, and all the big players, at least in LTT, are poised to invest in lodging and have invested in lodging housing. We're investing, and would love to be part of an effort. I don't know if collecting that through an additional lodging tax is precedented. I don't want to see Cook County be put into a position where we have a higher tax rate than anybody else in the county, or anywhere else in the state. So, but I believe there's efforts, and I believe that there's a lot of partners within the lodging ownership that would become, and we've done, the quad cot or the one room project. We hold the leases, or we secure the leases on those properties, meaning if they sit empty, we still pay for them. And we did a collaborative effort to make sure that there was sustainable housing available, and we are poised to do more of that. I just don't know if it's collecting through lodging. I see people looking for housing all the time. It's teachers, it's border patrol agents, it's law enforcement agents. I know two that can't find housing. It's not just.
Well, yeah, so it's like, we've got, so we're looking to fund housing, right? How do we do that? There's grants, those are competitive, there's both state and federal grants. So we can go for that, and we hope to, hopefully with the formation of the rate. There's property tax, the burden is on residents. There's sales tax, burden is on residents and visitors, maybe leaning more towards visitors. Then there's lodging tax, the burden is on all visitors. And so in the interest of locals, residents, that's where I would jump to, is the lodging tax. And, if that's the kind of information we need, if that type of tax would make the county less of a destination or less desirable, less competitive, that's important to know. I'm skeptical that it would affect things too much, but again, I wouldn't know as well as y'all. So,
and I guess I hadn't thought about it before, so I don't know completely, but it seems like a 5% lodging tax is pretty steep.
Yeah, nothing to sneeze at. Yeah.
And I'll bring it back to the covenants. It would be way outside of anything Boston would ever hear, ever.
Well, have you ever heard of a short-term lodging tax or a short-term rental tax classification? Like, this is the type of thing.
We have lifted some heavy loads, haven't we?
This is something to do, So I think it's really important. It's such a big issue statewide that we need to. But I hear I'm really pleased with the AMC discussion because
They have policy committees, work that's going to begin this fall, and I think it's a great place to have those conversations.
But they're going to be faced with the same dilemma. Where does it come from?
That's right, but all money has to come from somewhere, and it's a
I don't
statewide
disagree.
issue, and I think we need statewide organizations.
And so how do people feel about that breakdown of grants, property tax, sales tax, and lodging tax? Like, on that spectrum, where would you see housing funding being most successful or most potential or least abrasive? And anyone can pull.
I think you laid it out well. I think when you look at it from a sales tax, that's everyone that visits and everybody that lives here, deals with that, and so it's shared across everyone, but that also has an impact on the experience when folks come up as well, right? It's not negligible, so you have to look at that perspective. The lodging tax, the locals, when you look at it from a local resident perspective, we say, well, that's great if that's if that's what you believe is driving the issue, right? And there's certainly counterpoints to that, that it's a piece of an issue, it's not the issue,
Wait,
right?
can you repeat that part?
I said you put it on lodging tax, and then people say, well, you put the burden all on the people that are visiting here.
Yep.
And that's great for people that live here, Dave, but it isn't necessarily that's for people that believe that the visitors have driven up the cost and bought up homes and turned them into rentals and this type of thing. They're going to believe that's the solution. That's not necessarily what we're hearing is the issue. It's a piece of what's causing the problem, but it's not the whole problem.
But how does that, how does the lodging tax, where's the bridge between the lodging tax and the root of the problem? Or what, I don't follow.
You have people in the community that believe it's the number of visitors that come here and the popularity through the advertising that is driving up the cost of housing overall. And so therefore the solution in the simplest form would land it on lodging.
Oh, well, see, we need spin then, because
Yes,
where I was coming from.
But that's my point. You gotta take into consideration there are parts of the community that believe that, and so if you're going to dispel that, you're going to have to put forth information that's credible, that is going to say,
Okay.
you know, that's not the whole problem, folks. You know,
Yeah.
otherwise you'll have a hard time getting the community behind any efforts we're taking. I guess that's where I'm trying to explain that.
Okay.
Well, and so just, we've been doing some research into other types of tax,
Okay.
alongside of, and I'm certainly not a tax expert.
Sure, no, all right.
But, 8.735% sales tax is collected in Cook County. And our understanding is that the 6.785% goes directly back to the state general fund
Yep.
and then gets redistributed among counties based on population.
That's correct.
Why isn't there more of a discussion with the state on redistributing it less on population and more on where that's coming from? Because if we're contributing a higher amount via sales tax because of tourism, because of increased day trippers, why aren't we getting more of that back in our budget? That seems like a better place to start, in my opinion, because you're reaching not just people who are staying overnight, which is what we're concerned with, but our visitorship comes from more than just that place. It comes from a lot of different places, and it does, yes, locals pay sales tax, but we also choose to pay that sales tax when we're participating in making a sale in our town, just as we would buying something at Target in Duluth. So, it seems like if this is a state issue, why are we trying to create a solution that only solves it for Cook County?
Oh, no,
And not
this could be potential. There
Yeah.
are 300 or something HRAs in the state, so any HRA would be getting funding from a local option lodging tax.
But
When you're talking about the distribution of sales tax, I believe that gets into fiscal disparities, and that's Senator Bach's baby, and messing with that, I think is more than enough of that.
I think though, like what we're trying to say is that lodging tax in that same way is an uphill battle. And not everybody is going to have the same opinion that lodging has the breadth of ability to continue to get taxed statewide to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Not everybody has an economy like the county where there is such lodging to be able to support additional tax dollars
Yeah.
towards fixing housing.
Yeah.
That happens to be something that's unique to us.
Yeah.
And I want to add that I feel like we need to recognize that there's an ebb and flow in tourism. It has ebbed and flowed over the course of its tourism path here in Cook County. We're coming out of a pandemic. Well, we all know that persona of tourist is that they're going to drive to a destination. Sure. Throw in the great marketing that Visit Cook County has done for the last 11 years of its existence. But there's another whole side of this equation. And, if you're looking at a Mike Larson behind me, he's lived through the 2008 crush, where there wasn't people coming here and the streets were empty and our community felt it and our employees felt it. And that was very, very much voiced to me when I came in 2013, is that we really wanted to create a sustainable 12-year economy that could keep people employed. And we've done a lot of that good work. So back to don't mess with it. that's where I say don't mess with it. Find another spot that it might work. I'm excited about an HRA because I think of things like, let's incentivize private investors. Let's get the city on board to say, okay, yeah, we've got these great lots, you know, owned by the EDA at Cedar Grove. Let's incentivize by putting in. We'll put in your water and your septic and your electricity, you put in the house. Something, you know, there's ways outside of free money and grants
Yeah.
that we can work at. So to me, that HRA is like,
Well,
yes.
the HRA can only do what it is funded, you know, like,
Mhm.
so that's where it's like, how do you fund the HRA?
Correct.
So that's why I have my lodging tax, but you're saying it may not be as, it might be not whole valid. But that's why I laid out all the taxes, those are our options.
Right.
Which one's the least resistance?
So like an HRA has its funding sources, so do destination marketing organizations and use of lodging tax.
Yep.
So, to your point, it would be running it up a flagpole that is, yeah, it's gonna put us at risk, I think, with the 1% renewal.
I think, yeah, for optics, I think it's so important that we try to stop commingling the conversations.
Yeah.
Because as much as we can, we're even doing it, we're commingling the conversation
Yeah.
of lodging and this 1%. And that's, I think, where it gets confusing to people and we can lose something that's really working well, is that we kind of have this one or the other kind of thought process that's kind of being absorbed within the community. And I don't think I think it's very important conversation. I think absolutely we have to focus on it. I just don't know if we can commingle the two.
Yeah, I'm trying to garnish and separate.
Yeah.
And I think the AMC route is going to be the best way to separate that. I think you're right, Lynn, there still is a risk that if we start talking lodging tax with HRA, they may look at our destination, blah, 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 and see that 1%. And there might be a correlate, they might look at both, but
I just want to maybe add a little personal perspective too. So I've got 1 foot in this tourism world and 1 foot in the housing challenge world. So I've been a Cook County resident without a home since February, and you know it's interesting to kind of step back and look at it from me, kind of trying to analyze all this, put this information together for you guys. And yeah, you know, I think this piece, which is a new piece today, does a great job of really kind of breaking down what this equals. And for me, in one word, vibrancy. You think of support to great local nonprofits, events that those nonprofits have put on, music. I mean, these are all elements and reasons why I wanted to be here in the first place. And so to put that at risk or to lose that for housing, or at least pieces, I think I'm not the only one that would want to be here because of those pieces. Yeah, we want to jeopardize that after a year. So.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that in our office too, about just trying to ask people more explicitly, like, what brought you here? Did you find out about the county in sort of isolation? Or did you come here because of the reason we all live here? Because it's beautiful and it offers a lot of opportunity to have a full and rich life. And a lot of that is because of our tourism economy. And, you know, I say that also as somebody who's currently looking for housing, you know, and I grew up here. I'm 6 generations from the county. It's a problem, as Linda has mentioned, that is outside of just tourism. And I don't know that lodging tax is the silver bullet we're looking for.
no, there's no silver bullet.
There is no.
That's a myth.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, make those. Yeah, no, it's just a tool. HRA is not going to solve our problems. A well-funded HRA is not going to solve all our problems, but it's a really strong tool, and I really want to dig into that. And this is a terrible thing to say, forgive me, but if I have to choose between housing funding and this 1%, it's clear which way I need to choose. I don't believe I need to choose. I think we can do both, and that's what I want to work towards, and I don't want to jeopardize it at all. So that's why my focus is, like, you know.
I appreciate that, and I really know that this is going to happen. If there's a unanimous vote by this body to endorse our pursuit, it's the pursuit that's going to be another heavy lift.
Right.
It's going to all come back to you if it gets endorsed by the legislatures, for the final approval. So having, significant buy-in at this point, I just don't want to run that same 100-yard dash right along
Yes.
HRA.
I don't think
It's
we
separate
can.
from that, and putting this 1% at risk right now
Right.
just doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. And so there is a lot of, it's going to be a hard conversation to have if we have the doubt within this body of endorsement.
How long can we have the 1% for?
The 1% will expire in November of '23,
I mean, after.
but
Yeah.
our fiscal year starts May 1 of each year. So if we go through the next legislative process and we don't get approval at the state legislature, we will take a whole year to really unwind
Yeah.
all the programming and event support through the next fiscal year. If we don't do it now and we don't get the endorsement and go through this process now, it'll be like, okay, sorry local musicians, you are not getting reimbursed at any, there's a lot of programming and funding that will go away.
I didn't ask clearly, I'm sorry, and thank you for communicating the consequences. If we sail through, we renew the 1% lodging tax after November of 2023, how long is it renewed for? Is that something we can work on?
Yep.
So, might we want to propose for longer, or?
We should propose for it to never have it sunset unless we bring it back. So we don't like to go through this again, just like the 3%.
Because where I'm going with that is putting it in jeopardy or trying not to, right? If we can ensure that the process of AMC is going to not be fast.
That's correct.
And so I see less jeopardy because both the process length as well as the lack of conflict of, the chamber's lobbyists and AMC lobbyists, just, it seems like we could have our cake and eat it. I see concern in your eyes.
Yes, I have some.
Please share your concerns.
This is a really hard issue. And I'm elected by taxpayers, so I'm hearing community. I totally understand where you're coming from. I was in the tourism business. I know how much you affected our business. Don't want to take that away, but we have a housing crisis in Cook County right now. We do. I really would like to see Visit Cook County and the Chamber, Judy Erickson, help us figure that out. Because if you help us figure that out, we wouldn't be really having this discussion today. It's because the community is telling us Visit Cook County does too much, they're too good, take some of their money. It's hard to explain to them, you can't just take it. But that's what I'm saying. We could tweak it. Not that that's the best option on the table, but I'm asking for help. We need to come up with really good options to help solve or fund our HRA to get somebody in that position. We have to come up with something. And I don't think right now the taxpayers of Cook County, the regular taxpayers, have an appetite for an increased levy so that everything can stay the same. So that's my frustration. I'm asking for your actual help and support. Let's come up with a joint solution that we can compromise on.
Stacy, I'm always available. In fact, we're unusual, Cook County, Minnesota, because of our tourism economy. My peers in the industry across the state and the Midwest and the nation for that matter, there's less percentages that sit in the seat that I sit in and have the relationships with the county, the EDA, the chamber. It's an unusual position. So I'm all about sitting and helping. I also want to make sure that we are educating along the way, which is part of what the work that we're doing is trying to educate our community members. I say it again and again and again, housing isn't just a tourism problem. We have a great tourism economy, that doesn't have a golden fence around it where it's not going to ebb and flow. We need to stay steady on the course. We pivot and shift all the time. We have not done any marketing all summer. We've shifted all of our voice inward. For a year, we did hand in hand with public health. There was a lot of work that was done by Visit Cook County that ran right up to the state, the guidebook, which was a big help. There's not other destination marketing organizations that have that kind of depth to be able to do that together. I'm so proud of the work we did. So I guess I'm just saying that the education piece is important, and it's more important to let our county community members know that are paying tax, that they're not paying the lodging tax, that the lodging tax is coming back to them in programming and events in really good ways. It's supporting that musician that might live next door. And so there's all kinds of things that lodging tax, that communication and education on how that lodging tax affects our community members, and they don't pay it. And it's covenants around use do not allow it to be used for housing.
Well, I guess just to clarify, are you thinking that AMC maybe isn't the best avenue for our approach here, or what are you?
Well, I think we should definitely go
Yeah.
through AMC.
Yeah.
But just like the classification issue,
Yep.
where we came together as a community with one voice, one plan, it was a compromise. Not everybody got what they wanted. I'd really like us to do the same thing with, how are we gonna fund our HRA?
Yeah.
And I think just like you said, Stacy, that you're representing like the taxpayers in the community, but there's also the representation of the tax collectors of the community, that, you know, these large tax collectors are the businesses, are the lodging businesses. And the lodging businesses that are collecting the tax are supporting the tax. And so I think that's something to be considered, is that me as an individual, I am not impacted by this. I understand that there's a logic connection, but there are people that are collecting the tax are very vested. And I'm wanted to just bring one thing up, just because my husband and I recently purchased a property in Ely, and have been some of their town council stuff, and their short-term rental issue is the same as here. They're worried that the short-term rentals are being bought up with replacement of long-term rentals. And so they've capped it. You know, there's a cap on the number of short-term rentals that can continue in their area, because they see it depleting their long-term housing situation, which isn't going to be popular for, you know, even my company, that idea. But there is something like that where eventually, how many more beds do you need here?
I love that point. That's really important. Just so you all know, the Visit Cook County Board of Directors, lodging, many of them large property owners, have all endorsed this renewal. They see the benefit and the value. So pick a Lutsen Mountains that pays upwards of most of the properties that I'm talking about, the large properties that are taking care of their housing, that have endorsed this, are paying 6 figures in property taxes. There's a benefit here. I mean, it's like, let's make sure we understand the voice of the property owners that have endorsed this renewal and their other contribution outside of the collection of lodging tax from our visitors. Am I helping you?
What kind of compromise are you thinking, Commissioner Hopkins? I guess,
And I'm clearly not seeing the whole picture here, because I'm like, yes to 1%, and I'm all in on 1% with AMC, and I see those as 2 clear paths. But you're kind of maybe looking at other paths, or what are other options or compromises?
I just want to make sure we think about everything. I don't want to take anything off the table
Yeah.
yet.
And I would say that you know, I strongly support the 1% to visit Cook County. I want us to really dig in on a statewide level with AMC, because this is a statewide issue, it's not just here. And the other piece is we're forgetting that if we form an HRA, just like Mary Sonnes has brought $5 million in 5 years to the EDA, that's what the director of the HRA is going to do. Their job is to go out and get state and federal money. And I think we need to personally create this HRA to get that mechanism going. And while that's starting up, we need to work with AMC at a state level to get the work done that our entire state needs.
Yeah. That's all, yeah.
We just need to remember that grant and funding requires a local buy-in. We need to have some money to match those grants or provide the public portion. So that's what, I just wanted to make sure we don't, it's like, oh, $125,000 for an EDA director, or HRA director is we're gonna get some free money. We gotta come up with another pot of money.
Well, I don't know, and I haven't heard any updates, but I believe our tax capacity is increasing. And so, you know, whereas we can increase the levy, the tax burden on individuals would increase.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so that's my hope, but I don't know if we can bank on that yet. So time will tell there. But that's where I'm hoping, because I hear the concern too about the tax burden, and that's why I'm looking at the logic, you know, side of things. But we'll see how the numbers shake out with the tax capacity. But and then there's the highway department too. Yeah, it's yeah, the time will tell, I think, there. I think yeah, my big takeaway so far today has just been the importance and I need to have further conversations, I think. I hope all of us do, with Representative Ekman and Senator Bach, just about how they see the lay of the land. And because I'll be very forthcoming with them and say, we do not want to jeopardize the 1%. And so we're thinking about the AMC path. Is that, you feel like that's enough of a separation, or are you going to be seeing parallels there? And we'll see what they say about that. But that's kind of my big takeaway, is how best to navigate that. Because originally I was thinking, get the chamber on board, get Judy on board, and we'll just go for 2, you know. And but I see that as being more problematic. And for that matter, we don't even have an HRA form yet, so there's that, and there's a process there, and time there, and a learning curve, and a board formation, and the bylaws creation. I mean, it's going to be a bit of work here. We're not going to just be able to throw money at it if we were to get something quick and fast.
And certainly the big takeaway from this discussion is we're all learning from each other and gaining perspectives, and we need to educate the people of Cook County as to what are the issues, and to indicate what is the lodging tax. I love your FAQ. I think education and working together to develop our HRA and work forward with the housing issue is good.
Commissioner Opportunity.
Yeah, I have a question for Linda, which you probably might not be able to answer, but so if this board decided we wanted to pursue a 1% additional sales tax, I don't know that we could since we already have one, but okay, let's just say we tried to do that. Would the Chamber and the Visitors Bureau be supportive of that, do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm a conduit for a 12-member board, and it would go right back to the 12-member board to see how we want to endorse that kind of a process. And that's the way we operate with anything, whether it's supporting the Gitchigami Trail or writing a letter of support for Visit to Leaf. I mean, that's how we operate.
That's
So,
why I said you probably
I can't answer that
directly.
directly. We go back to the board of
What do you
directors.
think the feeling out there would be?
Pardon?
Do you have a sense of, yeah,
So you said sales tax?
I'm saying sales tax.
An additional sales tax,
Okay.
that would
Which-
be, you have to think about who's paying that sales
Yeah,
tax again.
that's-
Yeah.
Oh, you said sales tax.
I
Yeah,
said
she
sales
said
tax,
sales
because
tax.
we've always said we can't do lodging tax, or using the word sales tax.
I personally, I feel that that's appropriate.
That's the sales tax you feel?
That's
for-
me
yeah,
personally, that's
yeah.
certainly,
No,
for this camera
yeah.
out there, not Physical County.
We're just talking ideas.
Board members,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Physical
It's
County.
in the brainstorming discussion, so you can throw,
And maybe if it was sales tax, maybe it wouldn't have to be 1%, maybe it could be a smaller portion of the.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's like, even in, Hermantown is 8.875 or something like that. I mean, there's other, it's a very difficult conversation to talk anything about sales tax. It doesn't have to be 1%. It can be a smaller percentage of sales tax.
Historical perspective, and one of the reasons that one of our key partners is Roots and Mountains, is that when Physical County was being formed, there was the conversation that took place to collect a 1% lodging component from retail and dining establishments. There was no appetite for that at that time. And over the course of my tenure here, just over 8 years, I've been encouraged to see what that looks like. And, pandemic, great marketing, as it's turned out, I've never felt like I have the true belief in going after that additional 1%. Now, for me, if you're going to collect additional dollars, and for all the voices that we hear underneath the housing, then I feel personally, not personally, that makes sense. Everybody's saying we need housing, we need housing, we need housing, so let's find some additional dollars somehow to be able to support that. And then once again, as the director of tourism for here, I will always sit at the table and be able to try and talk truth. That it isn't just a tourism problem, and that's the piece that, that gets us a little riled in the office, just like there's certain issues and people for you. I mean, I really want people to be educated on the actual fact. There are more people outside of tourism looking for housing than there are actual hospitality frontline workers.
I feel like I broke it down a little too simply with the whole grants, property tax, sales tax, lodging, because when you get into sales tax, there's also fuel tax. There's also excise tax. We can tax tobacco products, we can tax alcohol. I mean, we can't, but the state, there are tools. Word is, there'll be a tax on marijuana in the not too distant future. So there are plenty of different tools. And I guess that's where our senator and representative are gonna have a lot better perspective. It'll get messy at AMC, that's for sure.
Can I just
Please.
pose this question? We came to the table with this renewal of the 1%, and the conversation about housing has been going on for such a long time.
Yeah.
Would lodging tax have been the solution that this county board would have come to had we not come to the table with the idea of this renewal at the same time?
Well, we get updates on both sales tax and lodging tax every month.
Absolutely.
So we see those numbers, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of like, it's
It would have
definitely-
certainly been part of the
It would have been
discussion.
part of the discussion,
Yeah.
but at the level that the public and that this
Oh,
board
yeah,
has
no.
connected it,
Right.
I guess that's my question. Would it have been the top item on the list for us to really examine, or would we have gone down some of these other paths first? I don't think if we were
That
in
was the one
a,
I heard first from the public,
Correct.
the very first one.
I think it
Use
is
what's already
timing.
out there, yeah.
Timing, because we're in a high demand period, and people are waiting in line everywhere.
Yeah.
There's been a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah,
it's the
construction.
timing of realizing how in demand our community is.
Sure.
And how short-staffed we are. We relate that to not having enough beds, and then we relate that to being too busy, and I think it's just the timing.
Perfect storm.
Perfect.
Yep.
And so you asked a good question, but were you leading this?
Just in thinking about what Linda's talking about, keeping the issues separate and
Yeah.
really talking about this 1% renewal, we have ramped up these conversations about the HRA, about housing and needing to solve that problem, and I don't think anybody from Elizabeth County is disputing that at all. I think it's just a matter of recognizing we have a timeline with this specific tax renewal, and looking at these issues separately, though they're both very important, we need to stick to the lane of what this renewal is.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean deciding not to be a part of the conversation about housing in the future, but I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, instead of renewing for 1% for event support, let's renew for an HRA. It just seems like that's part of, it just seems like that got crossed.
Yep, yep.
And I think it can be boiled down too by the big collectors of this huge budget are self-solving their housing problems for the majority. And so I think that's where it becomes a little disconnected for me, is that I know who has in housing crisis, and those of us, we are all in that, true. But the people collecting the lodging tax are solving their own housing crisis with, their own funds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it becomes a little disconnected.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
Here's me going on a limb again, but if I was to read the situation, how I interpret it is there's skepticism, but support for the 1% renewal. And so that's just me trying to give reassurance. And that may not be true when the rubber hits the road here, but that's my read on it. So,
Can I ask a question on what your timeline is? And also, I know that you received a number of letters of support.
Yeah.
What's the timeline on, maybe you've already read the letters of support?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's your timeline on your vote for endorsement?
We haven't said anything, but I think we can do it next meeting. I don't know. I guess I would defer to other commissioners if you want more time to talk more with more people, or I feel like and I'm not saying something. I've talked to people, quite a few about it, and gotten quite a bit of personal anecdotes as well as concerns, and again, it does cross. Those conversations cross often, but and we have received the correspondence. So I don't know if we want more time or if we can put it on next meetings or next agenda.
I feel like I've spoken to many constituents and would be ready to make a decision.
Okay.
I'm not there yet. I got a phone call just last night.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not there. But this isn't going to go to St. Paul until April, May, right? It's
It's
not
a
like
lot
we
of
have
work that
this.
needs to be done, and so we would be bringing it to Senator Bach and Representative Eklund when they come for their visits October 29th and 30th.
Yeah, October. Yeah,
And there's
have
a lot
decision
of
by October.
there's a lot of work to be done, which is, the reason I asked the question is, what more can I bring to you through my board of directors and the team at Vissaquah County? If there's additional information that you need, I would like to hear what that is. Or I'm always available to talk to, like you said, you just got a phone call. You can always say to anybody, call Linda. Just go down and visit, because I am available all the time to have the conversation and to answer tough questions. So know that that's an option for you, Commissioner.
I appreciate that. I don't feel right doing that because we're the ones making the votes, and so we need to have that. But I know I can, and I have reached out to you, so I appreciate that, that you're available. But I feel like I need to be accountable. Personally, I don't know about other commissioners. We need to know what we're talking about, right?
Commissioner Storley, do you need anything? Do either of you need anything? Thank you.
So it's just as No, could you help me understand too about your conversation last night and just the question? Because we need to know about where this confusion lines crossing and, or just, more opinions too.
Well, it was about, the 1% versus the 3%,
Yeah.
and we should use some of that 1%.
Was the person understanding the difference between
Yes,
the
I explained
2010
that.
1% and the 2008 lodging 1%? Because that's another confusion point for people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
Sales
we-
taxing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And that's another thing which Brady was saying, when's that paid off? Are we ahead on our 1%?
Well, let's not
20 million?
cross the lines anymore.
There's more money that we could use.
I'll
We
get
could just
three
get that
streams
paid
going,
off.
yeah. I think, no, Brady is, he had an appointment he had to attend to, personally, I didn't.
So, yeah, no, it was just making sure that we are not just relying on property
Right.
owners,
Right.
that we are talking about everything, different funding sources.
Yeah. So to bring it all back, it sounds like 4 of us are comfortable, or 5 of us comfortable having on the next agenda? Or what?
Beginning of September, I'm comfortable.
Well,
Next meeting is on August 24th for you all, okay?
right,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's where I would like to put it, from kind of the feedback and, the feedback and timing and schedule. Sorry. Yes, we have the 24th and the 14th of September are our meeting dates. And so how does the 14th of September sit with ECC? Difficult?
I would only say that I would like to allow the most time possible to work with our chamber and Judy Erickson on bringing Judy up to date and having the most time to prepare for the visit with Senator Kaufman, Representative.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks doesn't feel as good as 2 months.
Well, and frankly, that's where I need more time, not for this vote per se, but that's where I need more time is with Representative Beckman and Senator Kaufman. That's where I need to focus my time now, or my conversation around this issue. And so I would appreciate more time before their visit too, to try to clear this off the table. But what I'm trying to find, I guess, Commissioner Hopkins, is how we can make you more comfortable with voting on the 24th. Is it just a rumination sort of thing? Well, no, I think,
I prefer the 14th.
Right. That's right. Do it long. I think.
And chicken bone if you want.
So that's where I would be sitting. I think there's 4 of us that are ready for the 24th, or will be. I want to help you be ready for the 24th. And so
I do
that's what I'm trying to get at. But we'll put it on the agenda for the 24th, and I'll do what I can to bring us all on the same, very similar page, or get the information we need.
And if I
And
can
if
provide
this isn't-
anything for you.
Well, I was going to say, if this isn't clear to the rest of the group, one of Commissioner Hawkins' strengths is the data and going through that, and so that might be part of, I'm assuming part of that. I do like data too.
I do too.
Sure, but it's not necessarily my strength. And so, if there's more data that we need to gather, that's what I'm going to help get that.
We just had a wonderful, because we all look at it differently. We are a small team at Visitor County, and we had Jim Boyd come in and have a very thoughtful presentation and discussion with our team so we could understand property sales
Yeah.
and how everything intersects. And it was very, very beneficial, just on a baseline understanding.
Yeah.
So I'm all about data. I'm all
Was that
about.
recorded?
No, it was not. Did we record it? I wish. I wish we did.
It was very helpful. It was. Jim has a huge perspective on the different taxes. He brought in some great resources for us.
Yeah.
Was able to break it down from the state level with property tax to, what residents are paying versus what, big resort owners pay, where that goes.
Huh.
It was really,
Yeah, it
really,
was really helpful.
really helpful for us to sort of understand in our own minds too, not to use strong language, but that myth about the burden of property tax coming from the local residents.
Yeah.
And just how deep our tourism economy goes to benefit
Oh, yeah.
all of us.
Yep. Summary's not here. Okay, great. Well, that's all that. Unless other commissioners have, some other, items they want to bring up there. We've gone through item 2, presentations about the lodging tax. Item 3, the discussion funding strategy for housing. And there's just the minutes. Anything anyone else wants to bring up? We're adjourned. Thank you for
Thank
your.
you. Thank you.
Your-
Thank
your
you for your
conversation.
time. Thank you.
Adjustment right now. I feel like I'm breathing up in my eyes and my eyelids.
Now I'm like, okay, I've got to let go and just like find my favorites.
Yeah.
But actually, I've been.
I
know.
I forgot to charge my computer this morning. That's why you better bring your cord.
Oh, just on the Zoom screen.
What's challenging,
And not in person. So the person he's our new event and marketing coordinator. And he comes from the St. Paul as the marketing director, direct destination marketing. No, it was very good. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know. That's not at all. Extended family, still there. Yes.
And his lovely wife.
Yeah,
on the trail.
Yeah.
So they're.
Apparently I dropped the ball there.
Oh, no, it's okay, I just, as we were going through, I was like,
All right.
he would have been.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Because, the conversation. These things here, they're going like that.
I know. Yeah.
So of course they're gonna rear up and say, oh, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I do that,
You know, but so no surprise there. And it was interesting in the discussion because we had the discussion of, you have a lot of these, lodging errors are self-correcting their own, workforce housing and this type of thing. I didn't want to be determined maybe for a person, they're the beneficiaries of all of this thing. That's where all the funding is coming from. And so they're just looking out for their own interest by building workforce housing. And it doesn't mean it doesn't benefit the community, because of course it does. If they provide housing, then that takes pressure off of other areas. So of course we want to encourage that. Have them do that. But don't oversell it, because, again, they're the ones that are reaping the benefits of having all the people coming up here. Don't oversell the fact that they're building
They're doing it.
for their,
Yeah.
they're helping to house their employees. They're doing that for survival.
Yeah.
They're at the basic. When we talk basis of needs, they're clear at the bottom here, They can't continue to thrive if they can't get employees, and the employees can't find housing here, so they're gonna spend some money to go do that, and that helps us, but That's what I mean, don't oversell it, because that's just, simple survival for them.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
The same thing with the hospital board, you know that from,
Yep.
when they did the ambulance quarters and stuff over there, that's simple survival. If we don't do that, there wasn't gonna be any ambulance.
Yeah. It's not a solution, it's
No,
just
it's a Band-Aid,
you know.
So, interesting.
Yeah, I wish I would have had Commissioner Hawkins, I felt like I was starting too much, and I really wanted to know. Because there's more skepticism there than I can grab onto, like, I just can't quite see, I can't make the connections, I can't see those connections of the solutions and the,
No,
you know.
and I don't know that she's there yet, she's still talking from an emotional state. I'm not speaking for her, I don't know, she hasn't told me.
Yep. Yep.
But I know she's, I get the sense she's getting phone calls and they're steering her to, go get the lodging tax or go get something. Because the lodging tax, as you say, that keeps it away from the homeowners and such up here, right? So of course they can get behind that.
Yeah. Well, there's even talk about, there's even the idea, and I guess I wish I would, because it was in my head, but just about the homestead credit and all that distribution. But there was just an interesting article out about taxing the second home differently and how, because they've been trying to do that in Florida with condos, and it just didn't work.
Really? Okay.
That was what the data was showing, or it did not deter the practice of just buying a whole building and sitting on it, and holding on to that. They're really trying to distribute more of the housing.
I just thought it was interesting because this is just how my brain works. So when you have our guy from, the chamber, he says that it's not the outside groups that are really causing our issue. But then when you break down the property tax and he brings the data, 76.6% of county property taxes come from people that don't live here. 23.4% do. Now that's not shocking to you and I, but that runs counter to the argument of people from outside coming in, whether they're doing them as rentals or whether they're just coming in and buying their houses. And nobody else gets to use that house because it's already owned from somebody outside the county.
This is also slightly inaccurate. This is property tax. Not all the property tax
Have homes on them. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay, that makes sense, because you're right, that is true. There's land that's been bought that just is sitting there.
But maybe not a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting though, when you get the numbers and you start looking at it, and you're like, well, wait a minute. That's why that's going to be great to have that conversation with him, because I really want to understand that basis for the discussion. He doesn't want to upset, as the chamber guy, he has all these different, people that he's trying to work with, businesses and property owners and lodging folks and everybody else. But I really want his perspective on it. When you say people coming in and buying up the properties and changing them over to VBROs and Airbnbs and other things, isn't a significant player in this.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Because you heard the discussion on Ely, making a cap on it, and I've had people call and ask me that, are you guys even considering putting a cap or trying to control this, right? Because it's a market forces are what's going on here, and I know you can't influence a tremendous amount of effect on that, but where you can, what are you doing to try to control that piece of the market here locally? And so that's been bound, how can you do that? Do you put these kind of restrictions or something on? But before that, I need to be a lot smarter on what real effect does it have? Because you don't want to jump out there and put something like that in place when it really isn't a key factor in what's causing your problem.
Right.
Right? You're just making people angry, and it isn't really effective. You know, it's not really helping.
And it won't stand legally, I'm pretty sure. Discrimination gets in there. And what do
I-
is it a lottery system? Or
I
like,
know.
you know, like-
Well, that's the whole thing. You open, when you start down that road, when she said that, I was like, well, it'd be interesting to hear,
Yeah. Well, it's illegal.
you know, well, yeah, I know, that crossed my mind, Dave. But it did.
Yeah.
I sat there thinking the same thing. It's like, it'd be interesting to see what kind of fallout is coming from that with legal challenges and everything else, because I think it would get challenged.
Yeah. Oh, it will be.
What's your basis for saying people can't take their own property and, you know, turn it into a business and go do this? You know? I think you'd almost have to do it more so through zoning or
Yes, you have to
something.
zone them. That's exactly.
That you have the ability as the local government to do, but to just put a cap on this number is, you know, that's kind of arbitrary, right?
Yes. And zoning, I guess, yeah, at some point, almost gets to that arbitrary state, but if you can demonstrate, like, no, it's only appropriate in this.
Right.
zone or whatever. But, so where, I mean,
I don't
the
know.
conversation's not over, but what's your inkling, like, as far as the funding of the HRA, like?
Oh, I had Sean Parrish wrote me a note over the weekend, and he wanted details on, you know, how is this going to be paid for?
Yeah.
And, you know,
I mean,
and,
not currently, but the dream, you know, like, I guess, or current, I mean.
well, you know, I tried to just tell him, well, first off, you know, I have to start with the disclaimer, we haven't approved an HRA yet, okay? I have talked with folks down in Lake County, because they've got HRAs down there, and St. Louis County, because I'm on boards with guys down there, and I just asked them, how did you get it up and running, and how's it working, and this kind of thing. And it basically just the same discussion we've had through the Minnesota housing folks that have come up. You gotta fund it initially to help it get started,
Yeah.
but then it's kind of like your EDA.
Yeah.
If it's effective, they're bringing in grants and they're bringing in these other things that, even though some county money may be going towards funding this, they're bringing in more than, you know, your money is growing through that investment, I guess is the way they put it, if you're doing it correctly. And they all stressed, just as we all know, right, with even our hiring of James here, you've got to have the right person in that job. So you need to be hiring really tough to get that. If you go that route, get the right person, because they make all the difference as to how effective they can be and how much it brings back. So I tried to relate that to, you know, in my response to Mr. Perry.